All right, good evening. Thank you for joining us for the Page Unified School District Governing Board work study session. We are going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 5:07. I'd like to go ahead and start with the roll call.
Brooke Weiss.
Sandra Kidman.
Amy Carey, member.
Thank you. And myself, Desiree Feller, sitting in on behalf of Board President Bob Candelaria. And I'd like to ask for Mr. Candelaria to be excused. He may be joining us tonight, but thank you for that. And we'll go right into our study session. So we have our first presentation, which is the PLC presentation given by Larry Wallens and Shannon Garrison.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We would like to build the importance of professional learning communities in our school change process. And we want to show that as a very core component. And so at the next business meeting, I would like the board to adopt a resolution supporting the professional learning communities as we move forward with this process. So I've asked Ms. Garrison to give us a overview so we all have a common understanding. And then I believe she's going to share a survey that we just did that will become our baseline data that we can use every year to evaluate how this is working. Ms. Fowler, with that, Ms. Garrison.
Thank you, Superintendent Wallen. Let me share my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up if you're able to see the professional learning communities presentation? Thank you. Good evening, Clerk Fowler, Superintendent Wallen, members of the board, colleagues, and our great community of Page. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to present to you on professional learning communities in Page Unified School District. The goal of this evening's presentation is to continue to build our governing board's background in the PLC process and to share information on where we've been, where we're at, and where we are growing in our ongoing work. My name is Shannon Garrison, and I am the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for our district. Let's start first with the 4 pillars of the PLC process, which are the vision, mission, collective commitments, and goals. The first pillar is the vision. As I think about our vision statement, PLCs provide the process for being a community of learners who are aligned to meeting the unique learning needs of every child in order for our students to become college and career ready and successful in a global society. The next pillar is our mission statement. This really is our day-to-day purpose. Our mission statement reflects our commitment to learning for all and that we are responsible and accountable for the education of every student that we get to serve in PUSD. Let's talk a little bit about where we have been in our work. We've set an intentional focus to make sure that all of our district PLC team meetings and in our individual schools, that there's a focus on our vision and our mission and truly living that work. During the past 2 years, our leadership team has reviewed concepts from learning by doing in our work in our principal PLCs to continue to grow in the PLC process. This is a great resource, and if any of our board members would like to learn more about learning by doing, I would be happy to share copies with you from our district resources library. The next pillar that we've been working on is our collective commitments. At the end of this last year, we were able to determine the following collective commitments. At PUSD, we are learner-centered, strategic, collaborative, authentic, and joyful. This work was taken a step further this year with our Project Elevate leadership team and the principals in our PLC work. Here is our work so far. Clerk Fowler, are you able to see our collective commitment statement here? Awesome. At the top of the page, you see our vision statement as a district, our mission statement, and then our collective commitments, which is really where we started last spring as a principal PLC team. We started with a focus on these words. What we did this year is really worked to bring this to life and to create full action statements of what it means to be learner-centered, what it means to be strategic, collaborative, authentic, and also joyful. As I shared, we've been reviewing our current practices in each of these commitments and opportunities for continued growth. And the goal of our leadership team is to continue to evaluate our collective commitments and make adjustments as we continue to grow and learn as a team. The next pillar is goals. Here you will see our strategic goal as a district from the strategic plan. When we think about goals overall, our school goals should be aligned to the district goals, and the team goals should be aligned to both the school and district goals. What you see here on this slide is really the goal as a district to become a B district as identified by the A through F letter grading system. We talk about our pathway to a B district. When we think about our individual school goals and how that moves from the district goal into each of our buildings, we have school goals that each of our schools are focused on to help us overall as a district move to that big goal, that strategic plan goal of becoming a B district. So I've shared this document with the board and staff and colleagues in the community to be able to look at those goals and understand what our goals are and how those are directly aligned to the district goal. When we think about our individual PLC teams, for example, our 4th grade PLC team at Desert View Intermediate, we want our PLC team goals to be aligned to the school goal for Desert View Intermediate and also be aligned to the district goals. Are there any questions about the 4 pillars, our vision, mission, collective commitments, and goals? All right, so I had a video that I wanted to share in this evening's board presentation. Unfortunately, I've had some technical difficulties and I'm not able to get sound. I will try it one more time, but if we're not able to view it, then I would encourage our team to watch the video.
The professional learning community process is a common sense approach that focuses on all student learning at high levels. While the process is simple to understand, its implementation is more complex. In order to successfully implement the PLC process, we must first take a closer look at its elements and structure. In this video, PLC architect Rebecca DeFore defines a professional learning community and the structures and mindsets that must be in place for implementation to be successful.
What we want to spend the next few minutes on is becoming crystal clear on what we mean by this term PLC. You see, the term has been around for a while. It's virtually swept the globe when it comes to educators knowing, what's kind of best practice out there. So we're thrilled about the fact that the term has virtually swept the globe. But like our good friend Michael Fullen from Canada says, the term has traveled, but the underlying concepts and practices are not moving nearly as quickly as the term, right? We're just throwing that term PLC around to define virtually every loose coupling of educators getting together once in a while. So I want to start by saying what it's not. We've had a lot of people tell us in the past, oh, we did PLC years ago. I remember that August day we came back to school after summer break. Our principal had hired a speaker and we did PLC all day that day. Or we read a book together. We had a book study about PLC. And then the next year we read about something else. Now I want to be really emphatic. Those two ideas could be great ways to learn about PLC, listening to the concept, attending a workshop, reading a book about it, but that's not what a PLC is. It's not a one-time event. It's not a program that we can purchase and bring into our school. When people tell us they've done it and now we've moved on to the next new thing, we can be pretty assured they're still working in a very traditional setting where a lot of people are reporting to the same building each day, but they're going into those isolated classrooms and offices. In other words, they might be calling themselves a PLC, but the practices haven't traveled nearly as quickly as the term. So it's not a one-time event, a meeting, a book study. All right, then what is it? Well, more recently, many educators have told us that we do PLC in our school. Every week on Tuesday morning from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, we do PLC. Now, we're encouraged by that because they recognize it is about coming together, but we would contend that those folks are in a pseudo PLC. What do we mean by that? They're considering PLC to be a once a week what? A meeting. We come together with our colleagues, typically for about an hour once a week. We'll have a meeting. And very often when we disband from that meeting, we go back into those classrooms, offices that are isolated. The meeting didn't have any impact on the work that we do day after day after day. So also emphatically, PLC is not a meeting. Well, if it's none of those things, then what is it? Well, this is the definition we hope that you have already or will embrace by the time you leave us. And this is the definition that will go back with you so that you can hold yourselves and your colleagues accountable to bringing this to life. Understanding clearly that PLC is not a one-time event or a weekly meeting, but it's an ongoing, never-ending process of continuous improvement. It's a process that allows the educators to work in a collaborative culture, learning together, and then testing out that learning in action research. Let's see if this works in our classroom, in our department, in our team. So we test out that new learning and action research in the hopes of getting better results for the students that we serve, because the key to improved learning for our students is the ongoing job-embedded learning for the adults who serve those students. Now, if you embrace that definition, we have to acknowledge that the schematic looks very different from the first two. You see, in this schematic, the organization, the school or the school district is the professional learning community. We all work in a professional learning community. And because of that, we're structured into collaborative teams, no longer into isolated, I'm in my classroom all by myself with just my kids, but we work in teams. We have colleagues that we can turn to and talk to and meet with on a regular basis so that we can learn together and test out that learning in our own settings to get better results for the kids that we serve. Now, in order to bring that structure to life, that we're now working in teams, notice the solid foundation, that we have a shared mission, a shared vision, collective commitments and goals, which might sound about as jargony as we can get. But all that means is we know why we go to work every day. It's to ensure high levels of learning for all, students and adults alike. And we work together to describe the futuristic hope of what we're trying to become. That's our shared vision. 5 years from now, if we stay committed to learning for all, what will we look like? Let's describe that futuristic hope in vivid language. And then we take the next step, the third pillar of the foundation, collective commitments. Every group of stakeholders in that organization, students, parents, teachers, administrators, board members, every group of stakeholders will make commitments about what must we do, what must I do every day in order to advance the vision that we're trying to realize for our organization. And then finally, we establish goals, long-term stretch goals that we know we're not likely to achieve in a year or 2 or 5 or 10, stretch goals that keep us moving forward, and then short-term goals that help us mark our progress closer and closer and closer and gives us a basis for celebration. That's the schematic we hope is already alive and well in your own organization, this is the one we want you to take back and share with others. Now, before
I'm going to stop us there and jump back into the presentation. As Rebecca just shared, a PLC is an ongoing process of continuous improvement that allows educators to work in a collaborative culture with recurring cycles of collective inquiry, that learning together concept, and action research to achieve better results for the students that we serve. So where are we at currently with our work? The exciting thing is that we're beginning to see the benefits of living the PLC process and that we're all rowing in the boat in the same direction. Our district and our schools operate as a professional learning community, and we have subject area and grade level teams that are a part of our PLCs. Research shows a clear correlation between clarity of purpose and effective schools. All of our agendas are focused on the 4 PLC questions. What do we want all students to know and be able to do? How will we know if our students are learning? How will we respond when our students do not learn? And how will we enrich and extend learning for students who are proficient? We continue to provide professional learning within our PLC team time to support individual teams, our schools, and district staff needs in the PLC process. Professional learning communities allow for shared leadership by inviting staff input in the decision making. We want to talk about how this benefits our kids and how this benefits students. Ultimately, you will see increased academic achievement and the following: decreased dropout rates, fewer skipped classes, lower rates of absenteeism, increased learning among all of our learners across the district, greater academic gains in those core subjects, and also working to close the achievement gap and working to remove the gap ultimately for all of our students. How do professional learning communities benefit the teaching process? Teachers will experience higher morale and feel less isolated. They're less likely to be absent. Teachers better understand the content and the meaning of the curriculum in which they're working to ensure that all of their learners meet that expectation. Staff makes greater use of data to make informed decisions to best meet individual student needs. And PLC teams exhibit an increased commitment to living the work of our vision, our mission, and they make those collective commitments and set goals to help achieve both that vision and the mission for the school and also for our district. So how do we measure the implementation of professional learning communities? How do we look at the growth and progress? And how do we look at opportunities for next steps? Our principal PLC team and leadership team at the district level has looked at the PLC continuum, which is a part of the learning by doing work. And the continuum allows teams to look at the implementation effectiveness of the professional learning community and where they are specifically within that continuum. There is a pre-initiating phase, an initiating phase, implementing, developing, and sustaining. Ultimately, in this work, we want to get all of our schools in the district to that sustaining level. It's been fun and exciting to look at the growth and progress from last year to this current school year. And that's a part of the work that our district principal PLC has done and will continue to look at as we continue our growth within professional learning communities. Our certified staff this year completed the National School Reform Faculty Survey. The results have been provided to our school board in a paper packet this evening. We're not going to go through all of the results, but I did want to make that available to the board and talk to the board about how our leadership team and our principal PLC will use those results to look at where we are currently, where we have some opportunities to continue to grow, and also where we can celebrate our implementation. And this ultimately, the review of this information will allow us to plan for next steps as a district as we continue to grow within professional communities, learning communities, and this work. Does everybody have a copy of the survey results for your review? Thank you so much for confirming that. I appreciate it. Ultimately, all of our work within professional learning communities is really what's called collective teacher efficacy. When staff work together, great things happen. The awesome thing is that we're beginning to see academic improvement and success as a result of our work. One of the quotes from Learning by Doing that really resonates with me within this work within professional learning communities is this: when a school or district functions as a PLC, educators within the organization embrace high levels of learning for all students as both the reason the organization exists and the fundamental responsibility of those doing work within it. Before we wind down with our presentation this evening, I want to give some celebrations, talk about our continued work, and make sure that I'm able to answer any questions that the board may have regarding professional learning communities and the information that you've heard this evening. A couple of celebrations first. Our leadership team, including district academic leaders, principals, assistant principals, and PLC leaders for our teams across the district, recently received training from Beyond Textbooks, and we took the data teams and PLC training on April 20th. During the training, our leaders drafted next steps for their PLC work to implement in the fall. I know this packet that we used as a guiding document in our learning in that training was provided also to our governing board and the community to be able to learn more about the training that we received. And the awesome thing is that through that work, we were able to draft next steps for each of our teams to begin implementing and take to the next level in the fall of this next school year. Superintendent Wallen, is there anything else you'd like to celebrate or add on our training that we had?
Thank you. I was muted. We've done a tremendous job this year in putting the PLCs out there. And the critical piece is we're seeing growth and progress in our common formative assessments. And that's because that process is a journey. It's built around high levels of learning. Mission, vision, collaborative commitments, shared goals all play into that focus. And when everyone is collectively moving toward that goal of learning, then we will get high achievement for our students. I want to thank you, Ms. Garrison, for that. Could you briefly just go through the survey, just hit maybe the first 3 or 4 to orient the board on what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Just wanted to provide an opportunity there if there was anything further on the training piece. We'll go back to the survey. The survey here specifically is from the National School Reform Faculty. Excuse me, I just wanted to make sure I got that language correct. And you can go through and see the specific questions that were asked of staff. You can also see on the first page, it really is an overview of who took the survey and was a part of providing that. The survey was provided to all of our certified staff, including administrators. Staff could indicate whether they were a counselor, a CTE teacher, specials teacher, or a grade level or subject level teacher. And what our principals in our next PLC, what we'll be able to do is to really dive into this specific data and look at how we can best support the different groups that answered the survey, as well as look at specific questions to target areas for celebration, to target areas that could be opportunities for next steps and growth and progress. And so this survey, the results are there for you, and really the next step is for us as a leadership team to take this information and use it to plan our instructional decisions moving forward with next steps within the PLCs. So as Superintendent Wallen highlighted there as well, the PLC process is a journey. It is never complete. It is ongoing and continuous. And so as we think about some of those specific next steps as a district and where we're going to grow, we'll continue to grow in all aspects of the PLC process. And tonight I've highlighted one of the next steps specifically will be to take these survey results as a principal PLC, go through them as a team, review each of the questions, and look for opportunities to celebrate, plan next steps, and to begin that planning for making action steps for next school year to continue to grow within the PLC process. As far as the collective commitments, I know that's also a part of our continued work as we think about our May 11th principal PLC coming up. Our leadership team will continue reviewing, refining, and planning the action steps for our collective commitments. And just like Rebecca DeFore shared in the video this evening, I too would encourage all teams to develop collective commitments and would even encourage the board to look at operating with the PLC process and developing collective commitments to the work that we continue to do as a district to best serve all of our students, families, our staff, our schools, and the community through our work. The leadership team, once again, will review these survey results and look at next steps. And these really just are a few of the next steps highlighted in this ongoing journey as a district around professional learning communities and this work. In closing, the goal of this evening's presentation was to continue to build our governing board's background in professional learning communities, provide the board with updates, celebrate the impact that PLCs are having in our district. It is awesome to get to see that we are seeing results. I remember one of my first conversations with President Candelaria about the PLC process, and I had shared that if we were not getting results as a district, then we were truly not living PLCs, or we might be living what they call PLC light. I'm excited to continue to share that our PLC teams are seeing those results and living the process. And the goal is to continue to grow and get better and better as we move forward together. I want to thank the governing board again for this opportunity to share information this evening, and want to make sure that I pause and ask what questions could myself or Superintendent Wallen support for the board around professional learning communities.
Can I ask a question, Desiree?
Go right ahead.
Okay, so I have a few questions. What I got out of your presentation, or your slides, the red slides, were four main questions in my mind. And one was, do we have a collaborative culture in our school district? Do we have teacher input in decision making? Do we model kindness, and do we celebrate successes? And then I went to the survey results, and I could only find one answer to that question in the survey. So I was wondering, what the answer to those questions were. And then also, who put the professional learning community survey together? I guess is my first question.
Sure. So the PLC survey is a survey specifically from the National School Reform faculty. That is
Okay.
a survey that was already put together. And you asked some excellent questions there where there may be an opportunity for us as a district to think about a survey around culture, to ask those further questions, or to even add questions to the survey. The survey was used as it was a resource specifically from the National School Reform faculty.
Okay, that answers that question. And then I noticed that it said 68 people responded. That seems quite low. Can you tell me why that might be so low?
Yeah, so here's what I know, Sandra. I know that the survey was open for 1 week,
1 week.
to get results, to look at where we were currently with those questions. 68 responses were provided. That is not the totality of the certified staff, and so that will be a starting place when we look at this as in our principal PLC to say, hey, you know, we only had 68 responses out of the total number of certified staff. That's where we need to start the conversation. And then leading into looking at the current results and talking about possible next steps to get further information or to analyze the information that we have. So excellent observation. And that is probably the first thing that most will notice when they look at it, knowing that our certified staff numbers are about twice as many as that.
So you think there's about 100? So I'm sorry, you said you expected more of a response, twice that many, about 140?
Yeah,
Or
as
would
far
that
as
be
certified staff, that would be my best guess is approximate number of staff that we currently have. It's more than 68 though. I would say it's probably close to double that. Superintendent Wallen, do you have any further information on there?
Well, that's about a 50% return rate, which is very high for a survey, as we all know. You don't, very seldom you get 100% of participants unless you set them down and require them to do that. And this was our initial survey to establish baseline data, and we didn't require people to sit down and do that. So these are voluntary responses, and we appreciate those, and they will give us insight on what we're committed to do and committed to move forward. And those questions are extremely powerful as we begin to guide our planning for next year. But
I guess I'm wondering why people would not respond more. Sometimes I wonder that when, you know, the first question was, I am administrator, counselor, CTE, teacher, blah, blah, blah. And then the next question was, I work at this and this school. So I think maybe if this was me personally, I think you would be able to identify me very easily and what my responses are. And I know personally that I don't like to respond to surveys where I can be identified, because then I don't, you know, then I might not be as honest as I would be, or as forthcoming. I would just rather skip the whole survey and not participate. So I'm wondering if we may have some of those issues.
That's a very valid set of questions and a valid point. The purpose of stating which group the individual fell into within the certified staff is for us to be able to look at it as a leadership team and look at how we can support those individual groups. For example, if counselors state that they're not having enough time to be able to talk with each other about situations and specific challenges that they face, that could be an opportunity for us as a district to look at, could we provide additional time for our counselors to have those conversations, and how could we structure those specifically? And as far as the school site, identifying that allows for leaders to look at next steps within their own building and how to continue to grow the professional learning communities process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for the questions. Are there any other questions from the governing board?
Any other questions? No, I think, Sandra, thank you for asking those questions. And I was just kind of going through the survey myself, and it's pretty interesting to see the numbers. But yeah, thank you for that presentation. All right, looks like no one else has any questions, so we'll go ahead and move on to item B, Teaching and Learning Research Project by Praveen Dubey.
I'm going to share my screen.
Okay, and this is taking the next step. This is establishing a baseline, and then one of the things that Praveen is talking about is then looking at our student population and developing culturally responsive education and technology to match our learners. And so he's going to go through and again share baseline information so that we have starting points for continued discussions. So this is kind of part 2 of the PLC process.
All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank school board members, president, Superintendent Wallen. This is an opportunity to provide my research work and in a way to give you the idea of what kind of research work is out there. So first of all, I would like to give some background information about how teaching and learning is related to culturally relevant education. And then at the end, I would like to add the technology piece there. So first of all, the culturally relevant education or culturally relevant teaching, these kind of vocabulary, they started popping up in 1960s and 70s at the start of like around the time when Johnson government, they started with the Civil Rights Act and desegregation and ESSA around that time. And there are a lot of work done after that. So there are a lot of other researchers, they toss the idea of helping the diverse population so that they can feel more involved and engaged in a environment where the sole idea is teaching and learning. So first of all, we need to understand what culturally relevant education is. So there are 3 pieces of information that I would like to say today. So the very first thing is in 1994, Gloria Ladson-Willings, she is a professor at Princeton University, I believe. She talked about the culturally relevant pedagogy, and she talked about how important and why it is important for the teachers, especially in professional development, PLCs, and then also in the teacher education programs to learn the pedagogy. And then in 2010, Geneva Gay, she came up with an idea of culturally responsive teaching. So there are 2 pillars of culturally education. One is culturally relevant pedagogy, and the other one is culturally responsive teaching. So in 2013, Dover, he came up with the idea, and he started publishing papers based on culturally relevant education. And what he did, he used both the 2 research together, and because teaching and learning is a part of teaching as well as pedagogy. So he combined those 2 things together, and then he came up with a new framework for teaching, which is culturally relevant education. So first of all, let's talk about what is Geneva Gay's 2010 framework says. So in 2010, when she came up with a culturally responsive teaching, this is a quote from her paper. it states that as using the cultural knowledge, prior experiences, frames of references, and preference styles of ethnically diverse students to make learning encounters more relevant to and effective for them. So what she's trying to say is he's trying to say that in order for us to create equity in education, we need to start teaching kids based on what knowledge we have and build on that knowledge and create a frame of reference where we can go back and refer to what kind of learning style they have, how they learn, and then respect their diversity and then go from there. So her research rests on 6 dimensions, and there are 2 other pieces of information that she talked about on her research is focus on teaching and then responsibility on the teacher. So in 2010, when Geneva Gates, he was talking about the culturally responsive teaching, the 6 dimensions of culturally responsive teaching relies on how effectively a teacher is engaged in providing a responsive teaching that fits the diverse need of the student population they are working with. So the first thing she talks about is the teachers are socially and academically empowering. She also talks about the multidimensional because she believes in engaging cultural knowledge, experience, contribution, and perspectives are important for a teacher to provide a culturally responsive teaching. She also talks about how a teacher can validate a student culture and then bridge the gap between a school and home. So what we often see as a teacher, even I am also a high school math teacher at Pace High School, there's a connection missing between school environment and what we expect a student from school and then what is there in the home and what kind of expectation we have at home. So we need to bridge that gap. The next thing she talks about is teachers are socially, emotionally, and politically comprehensive as they seek to educate the whole child. So over here, when she's talking about the culturally responsive teaching, she's just not talking about the grade. She's not talking about a content. She's not talking about how to mastery or how to just get the grade and graduate. She's more talking about how can we teach a child as a whole, not just in parts. We need to teach the student and consider as a human being and teach as a whole. The next thing she talks about, the teachers are the one who are responsible for school societies and their existing strength in terms of instruction, assessment, and curriculum. So don't get me wrong. I did not say that the teacher should not make a student accountable for the test grade. I did not say that there should not be a high expectation. All those things should be there. In addition to those things, we also need to treat a student as a whole child. That's what she's talking about. And then the next thing she talks about is how when we practice and our ideology of education does not match. So what we need to do when we practice our educational practices, and when that does not match the ideology that a teacher or a student has together, then that kind of situation is imminent, and then you will see the gap and the students are not participating or all the other things that goes with that. And one more thing, like before I go to the next slide, when we talk about the culturally responsive teaching, I'm not in any way, I'm not saying that we need to teach in one way or the other way. You need to look at the culture of the organization. What kind of culture, because every organization has 5 pillars, And culture, social, and human, these are three capitals that our organization is built on. So we have to consider the cultural capital, social capital, and also the human capital of that organization. Not just the student, the whole organization, which has teacher, administrators, student, custodials, bus driver, everybody, including in that organization. So then we talked about the 4 actions essential for implementing a culturally responsive team. So teacher need to understand the replacing the deficit perspective about like a student's ability, whether they can do this or not. We need to get rid of that kind of perspective. Resistance to culturally responsive teaching from critiques. Some people might not agree with the perspective of a teacher or a student or all together as an organization, and they are opposed to of those changes. So teacher needs to be aware of that oppositions from all the stakeholders. How and why culture and difference are essential ideologies. So we are human beings, we are not built together. It's not an assembly line building where it doesn't matter where you go and get your Ford Focus, whether it's in New York or Arizona, you will get the same Ford Focus or a Ford F-150 if the tread is like, it's the same thing, it's not the same. We are all different, and a teacher has to provide that kind of environment where everybody can move together. And that's why when she was talking in her framework, she talked about the whole child. She didn't talk about the content. She didn't talk about standard. She did not talk about test or assessment or instruction. But that doesn't mean that it's not important. The last thing she talks about is make pedagogical connection within the context of teaching. So a few years back in 2007, I believe, or 6 or 7, I was teaching in University, and there were questions related to how long the Brooklyn Bridge is. And some kids, they did not like connect that context of question in math, finding the angle of elevation in their trigonometry class. So the point here is, if you cannot connect the context of teaching, then it's hard for students to connect that to their own prior experiences. So the experience and their own perspective, everything should be built on those 2 things. Now, so the second part of culturally relevant education is pedagogy. So this verse comes from Gloria Lanson Billings. She's a very renowned professor. She has done a lot of publication and research in terms of pedagogy. And that the statement was so profound that I end up using that in one of my research papers. And it says that a pedagogy as one that empowers students intellectually, socially, emotionally, and politically, using culture reference to impart knowledge, skill, and attitude. And this is the quote from her 1994 work, which was at page 16 and 17. The second thing she talked about is a pedagogy of opposition, not unlike critical pedagogy, but is specifically committed to collective, not merely individual empowerment. So over here, when you put that perspective, collective and empowerment in any given organization, that talks about every single person involved in that organization, from custodian all the way to upper higher, all the way to the governing board and everybody else. So she talks about culturally relevant. I can see my screen. Give me 1 second. Let me open it on my desktop. All right, yeah. So the culturally relevant pedagogy thinks in terms of long-term academic achievement and not merely end-of-year tests. So when we talk about the pedagogy, we're talking about the not just like how to get a good grade in any given assessment or at the end of the state testing. It talks about how we can create a lifelong learner within the given organization. It also focuses on cultural competence, which refers to helping students to recognize and honor their own cultural beliefs and practices. So that goes back to how often a student can recognize what kind of rituals or what kind of practices they have at their home and how they can relate that to their identity. And then next thing it talks about seek to develop socio-political consciousness, which includes a teacher's obligation to find ways for students to recognize, understand, and critique current and social inequalities. So when we talk, like most of the thing within a classroom, we don't want to talk about what are the deficiencies in the education system, what are the inequalities. We don't want to talk about that. What her research suggests that we should talk about that. We need to identify the social inequalities. And when we identify those inequalities, then we can go back and address and do something for that. Now, there are two strands for this framework. The very first strand that I already talked about was Geneva Gray's culturally responsive teaching that talks about teaching primarily seeks to influence competency and methods, describing what a teacher should be doing in classroom to be culturally responsive. So here the key word is what the teacher is doing within the classroom. And then the next thing that came out from the Gloria Lanson-Welling's research that focuses on pedagogy primarily seeks to influence attitude and disposition, describing a posture a teacher might adopt that, when fully embodied, would determine planning, instruction, and assessment. So in any way, these two researchers are not saying that we need to reduce the rigor. We need to reduce the expectation. What they are saying, we need to adopt the cultural relevancy in the education so that the education is culturally relevant education. Now, so what I have done here, I have analyzed the two works and then try to connect those two research work in terms of how Dover in 2013 did to compare the teaching and pedagogy to come up with an idea about education. So as you can see, these bullet items are matching all the items right here. So the thing for us to implement a culturally relevant education is academic skills and concepts. So as I said earlier, none of these researchers ever suggested that we don't have to have an academic excellence. They are suggesting we have to have an academic achievement, but keeping culturally responsive in place. Then they talk about, Dover talks about how critical reflection is involved in both the two research. Even though one research is about teaching, the other research is about pedagogy. The next thing is cultural competence. And then the last one is critique discourses of power. So so as you can see, we can parallel measure all the bullet items from one research to another research, and we can also align which one goes with which one to clearly understand how culturally responsive teaching aligned with the pedagogy, and then how we can embed both the two things together to provide a culturally relevant education. Now the question is, so when I was writing this paper and my intent was to publish, I was very curious about if I have to suggest, is there any study that is done in terms of math or science or history or language arts? So just to let you know, I'm happy to announce you that there are a lot of research. In fact, I can share you at the end of the presentation. There are a lot of research done in terms of culturally relevant education in math, science, social science, history, English, music. I didn't have all the space, otherwise I was going to mention all the research, but every area you will see something that is relevant and that is done to accommodate or to provide the foundation for culturally relevant education in all the areas of teaching and learning. Now, so two things we need to understand is, what do we need to know? The first thing we need to know is a pedagogical knowledge. So there are 5 major approaches for pedagogical knowledge: constructivist, collaborative, integrative, reflective, and inquiry-based. Now, when I was doing this presentation to Mr. Wall, and he asked me, which one are you? Which one out of these 5 are you? Not necessarily everybody needs to be competent in all the 5. Remember, Mr. Wallen, you asked me that question? The point here is I am very comfortable in collaborative, in inquiry-based, and reflective. I struggle with some other areas, but that's okay. You cannot expect a teacher to be competent on all the 5 areas of teaching. Now, the point here is, how good I am if I'm only competent in 2 or 3. Trust me, it's more than enough that you need to survive in any given classroom. People say that you have, like in evaluations and observations, where teachers are observed at 100% efficiency. Trust me, it's not possible. If your lesson is 60 to 70% times successful, you are a very good teacher. And even not a professional players, they are 100% efficient, like if every player was 100% efficient, we can turn off the TVs and we can say like, okay, this team is going to win. We don't have to watch the game, because that's not the case. Now, the next thing is what comes under the subject knowledge. So the subject knowledge has math, English, science, social studies, history, everything else. And then I did not include music. It doesn't mean that I don't like music. I like music, but just a space constraint. All the subjects that we teach, that is the subject knowledge, comes under the umbrella of subject knowledge. When we talk about the culturally relevant education, these 2 things are together part of teaching and learning, which is eventually becomes culturally relevant education. Now, where these things coming from? We need to understand how these frameworks are coming and why it is important. So before 1984-86, people and all the deans and education program at universities, they were treating content knowledge and pedagogy 2 different things. And they were saying that it's mutually exclusive. Content knowledge has nothing to do with pedagogy. So in 1986, on his paper, Professor Lee Salman, he's a very renowned professor at Stanford University, he came up with an idea saying that teaching, like whatever you teach, and then pedagogy, they're not mutually exclusive. They are together. They are related to one another. Knowing a content knowledge is one thing, and then putting that content knowledge in a perspective is another thing. When you can become a culturally relevant education or a good teacher, when you combine both the 2 things together. So he came up with, say, all these ideas. Most of the time, the research suggests that we talk about most of the observations and things like that are right here at the bottom layer. Instead, we should focus over here on content, pedagogy, how that is related to the principles and strategies, how that helps a teacher to provide the the needs of, or help to get address the needs of the student. So I'm not going to read it, but if any question on this slide, I can definitely explain it. So now the question is, how do we do culturally relevant education and using the Selman's framework of content, knowledge, and pedagogy in this environment, like a COVID environment, COVID era. So, so I was reading this news where they were saying that COVID is going to be gone. Trust me, it's not going to be gone anywhere anytime soon. That's my understanding is. So what we need to do, we need to prepare ourselves for teaching these students, and we cannot come up with an excuse saying that there is a learning gap between like when they were face-to-face and now here. So what the two researchers, Misra and Kohler, what they did, they took the research of Dr. Solomon, and what they did, they put a piece that's called technological knowledge into that piece. So content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. This is from Selman's work. What they added a piece that is called technological knowledge. That's where the technology plays a role in. That's what the technology can fulfill the gap. So in order for us to use all the 7 components of TPAC, we need to be here in this dark green place where the teachers are trained in content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and they are also trained in technological knowledge so that they can use all the 3 components that gives us 7 components of teaching and use that in teaching. So the 7 components are right here: technological knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, content knowledge, technological content knowledge, technological pedagogical knowledge, and then pedagogical content knowledge. And then the last one is technological pedagogical content knowledge, which is like TPAC, the entire. So things to consider. So one thing, so when I was running the data for this, I was actually running the data for the using the PISA data that is easily available. It's a publicly available data from NCES, National Center for Education Statistics. So one thing that I observed and is that like the professional development for PDs should be provided to the teachers. So one thing that I would say before I go into this list, as you can see, the entire foundation of culturally relevant education is based on teachers. So what if we want a teacher to be successful in a classroom, that teacher needs to be equipped with all the resources that we can provide. And trust me, nothing is more. You have to keep providing the resources, because one thing that works in one classroom doesn't work in another classroom, because it's a totally different dynamics. All the components are different and everything is different. So what we can consider PD for school diversity, school culture, and history, case study in different learning areas. If you remember in one of those slides I mentioned right here, like there are examples of culturally relevant education in math, science, and whatnot. And we need to provide the work sessions. So these researchers have done the work on culturally relevant education in different subject areas. We need to have a work session on that. The novice teachers, the newly graduate teachers, when that comes to the district, we need to provide the mentoring program that is based on using the components of culturally relevant education. We can provide the cultural nights around student culture, tradition, and history. We can have the same content and subject knowledge teacher mentoring each other, and then they are also getting the perspective of how the students are feeling. And when I say culturally relevant education, I'm not talking about one particular race or ethnicity. I'm talking about all the things together that creates the culture of the organization, that creates the culture of, in this case, it's a Page Unified School District, not a person, not a teacher, not a school, the entire district. The next thing is staff recognition for cultural relevant education. I studied this, there was a research done by this researcher based on the Montana public schools. The researcher did a lot of interviews and descriptive statistics and run a statistical model to find how the teachers are doing in that area and how they're serving the needy population. There are a lot of different research there. We can definitely study that. And then community visits by administrators, teachers, and staff. And then when I say that, it's not just sending a letter. What I meant to say that we need to be actively participating in those events. Like we should have a representative for Page Unified School District in one of those chapter houses or one of those meetings. We have to have a spokesperson, a PR who goes there and talks about the programs. It doesn't matter how many times you talked about. You have to keep talking, because every time you will learn something new about the program, about the community, or about the culture and whatnot. And then the next thing is improving technology, reach to students, parents, and teachers. I was doing a research with one of my peers, and my peers are spread out all over place in the country. Some of them are in even other countries. So they were talking about how one school district in Texas, they are saying that they are not going to invest more on technology because they already did. But the point here is technology changes every other year or every third year. It changes and brings something new. So they need to keep investing and creating the resources to provide and fill that gap. There are references. Any questions for me?
Board members, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a question
Go ahead,
or
Charles.
some comments. So I think you really hit the mark with things to consider on 8 and 9. That's probably a big thing, because you said you're a school teacher here at Page, correct?
Yeah, I'm a high school math teacher at Page High School.
And how long have you been teaching here in Page?
So I was in Page. I was a teacher for 7 years. This is my 7th year. I was in Tuba City for 4 years, and then I was in Chinle for 4 years. So around 14, 15.
So you should be very culturally responsive with the students for the most part, correct?
Yeah. So like as far as the language is concerned, I'm not very comfortable, but most part I know what to expect, in terms of.
Let's compare it to, when you were in school or in college and the teachers that were teaching you. I mean, I don't know if they were culturally responsive towards you. You know what I mean? Because you have a lot of Native American students and you've taught a lot of Native American students, but I'm sure you understand their lifestyle, their way of living, right?
Yeah.
Do you? Would you say?
So yeah. So let me put it in this way. So like when I was in Chinle and when I was in Tuba City, I was teaching in Tuba City, but every year I had at least 1 to 2 people going to one of the Ivy Leagues and other schools. So point here is you need to understand what they need. Like if I'm trying to say that like it's a learning moment. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm saying you have to learn what they need and how to help them so that they are feeling good about coming to your classroom or coming to school for that matter.
Well, and I think, you know, it starts probably early on, you know, at the elementary level, you know, because kids, when they come to school, it's maybe to Page or any of the other schools, it could be a cultural shock to them, you know, to come to a school, something that's unfamiliar with them. You know, you might see students even now in high school that are reclused or bottled up, you know, and they're very shy. And, you know, when they talk or when you speak to them, they're not looking directly at you because, you know, they're shy. And so, you know, it could be because of what you're saying, you know, the cultural aspect of when these students are in school, you know, and just going on from elementary on up to, you know, where they're at in high school, you know, that competency level and their confidence in, you know, the way they respond back to you. You know, are they competent in what they're saying or confident, you know, when they answer a question?
So my experience with so in Tuba City, like 99% kids were Native American. I would say almost 99% kids in Chinle, they were Native American. Here, I believe, if I remember the statistics correct, numbers correct, 78% to 80% kids are Native American. The one thing that we need to consider, the Native American kids, they do not like to stand out and talk about, you know, their work or their problem or what they are doing. So one thing that I like doing in my classes, personally speaking, collaboration. Like you put 4 kids in a group, and then they will work on one certain assignment or certain project or activity.
Yeah.
And then you will see the participation. But instead,
I understand because, you know, just from my own experience with the military is the most diversified job in the country. You know, you have so many different ethnicities working together, and it's like, well, you're told you have to work with groups, right? You have to work with a team. There's, you know, there's many teams involved, and it doesn't matter who they are, where they come from. You're working together as a group to get a certain task completed, right? In the same sense, right? You're teaching the students to work together and to, you know, whatever, you know, their background is, right? But you're getting them to open up and work together and to understand and, like you said, collaborate to solve a problem or a task and to help understand each other. Because there's more different ways, you know, people have different learning styles, right? You know, whether they're visual learners, hands-on learners, you know, there's those deals, right, to work with.
yeah, I think I really like how you said that everybody has a different learning style, and I think as you can see, the responsibility, there's a lot of responsibility for a teacher. So I would say if a teacher is not prepared to provide that kind of learning for a student to in that given classroom, then there is a problem, because like as you said earlier, every child has a different needs, and they have a different learning style. So instead of teaching, like taking one as a standard or one as a content or a skill, we have to treat that student as like a whole and look into their.
So knowing what you know and being in Page, do you feel that this is not happening, the cultural responsiveness for teachers and staff, or I mean, does it need to be improved?
Oh God.
I put you on the spot.
I
I put you on the spot, didn't I?
So Okay, so I will just say thing, like something. So like as I said earlier, like to run that, I'm a math person and I see everything black and white in terms of number. Let me give you a scenario. And since this is like a work session, I think I can give you that kind of scenario. 78%. So this is a question for, this is beyond my pay grade, especially I'm a high school teacher, so beyond my pay grade. But this is a question for everybody, all the administrators and the school board and everybody else. 78 to, I get a attendance report from attendance office. 78 to 80% fluctuates, but in between 70 to 82% student population is Native American. Now look at the staff population and what percentage. And I don't know the number, and I don't answer the question plainly. So look at how many staff members are from that background. Mm-hmm. And then look at how many teachers are staying that long, even if they are not from that background, maybe because it's possible. The reason why I cannot answer those questions, because I don't know how many people are graduating from local public schools, like universities, to become a teacher. How many people have a license and whatnot, and how many people are teaching as a profession. So you need to look at what percentage of students out of 2,600 is, and then what percent of teacher, how long those teachers are staying. And if your number is less than 5, we are in trouble. The reason why any plan to execute and fully function within any system, we need at least 3 to 5 years. If we change the curriculum every year, if we change the teacher every year, or if we change the instruction, the way you teach, or the textbook, or the mode of delivery every year, you will not find whether it's effective or not. So in order for us to do that, we need to look at all the components of all the pillars of the education. How involved the parents are the parents involved in decision making? Are the teachers have input in decision making? Like if the teachers are taking those professional development, are they talking about what they are doing? How relevant their discussion is? If they are discussing, how relevant that discussion is related to what they are teaching in their classrooms. So you have to study a longitudinal study, collecting data about every single aspect, because we can easily say that, oh no, whether teacher is staying or not doesn't affect that, but that's not true. You have to consider that factor.
I think, in my opinion, this slide presentation that you've provided is based off of what you've experienced in your years of school. And I agree with it, because, even before the COVID situation, we've had these issues in school, right? With the cultural responsiveness, with our teachers, right? And with the COVID situation, of course, that, just added to it. So, I'm just wondering, with this, presentation, how are we going to utilize this, and how are we going to bring this to light moving forward, in Page Unified School District?
One thing I would like to mention, Mr. Wallen, I don't remember what month was, there was a presentation from the school about the Immersion Program. Like, I don't know, it was February or March. We are planning to start an Immersion Program as a pilot program, probably, and see how it goes and how we can build up. I think that's the one initiative we can do that, and then building on the same program, you can create other things too. So yeah.
Yes, Larry.
Sorry if I didn't answer your question in yes and no, because.
Larry,
Okay.
you are muted. Sorry.
Sorry, this was one of the areas that we're studying. And last week I spent 3 days in the equity conference at the Arizona School Boards Association. Was a phenomenal conference. And it talked about culturally responsive education. And equity is what has now surfaced as a result of the COVID-19. We now see the inequities that exist, the inequalities that exist. So for example, being equal means that everybody has shoes. Doesn't matter if they fit, what they look like, everybody's got a pair of shoes. But equity means everyone has a pair of shoes that fit and that look good. And so that's something we struggle with, and as we move forward and we look at, because when we look at our achievement score patterns, we know that there's an equity in our achievement patterns. We know there's an equity in assessing the computers to go on to log into the system and stuff because of where people live. So this is all exploding now in education throughout the state and throughout the country, is all under the equity movement and the culturally responsive education. And so this is a beginning piece to put that together. This lays a foundation for discussion as we move forward to show that. And as Praveen said, one of the things that I'm pushing hard on is getting Dene language teachers in the school. Remember though, that we have 32 languages in Page Unified School District, 32 languages. And maybe only 1 or 2 kids that speak a certain language, but we still have 32 languages. And so we need to recognize and begin to affirm the cultural values of all kids in an equitable way so that we can impact student achievement and learning that way. Thank you.
Yes,
I would just
Charles.
like to mention that, you need to highlight 8 and 9 on things to consider along with communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
all I had.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions? I just like to thank you for your research and bringing to light a lot of information that it needed to be addressed. And also, I think we've already have started the conversation. But just kind of to go back to what Charles had asked a question about the students and the staff. Being a previous paraprofessional at Lakeview, I seen our students, kindergarten, first and second grade as for the year that I was at Lakeview. But it really opened my eyes. The reason why I say that is because we had students when I first dressed up for Native American Heritage Day. I dressed up, and only a few students dressed up. But when I thought, okay, I'm going to dress up again next week, but this time I'm going to start telling the kids, Yaate Bene, good morning, or saying Yaate. And so when I did, it was just kind of sad to see our young Navajo students putting their hands in front of their mouth and whispering to their friends and saying, she's talking to us in Navajo. And there was just no sense of pride in actually being able to speak loudly or responding, saying Yaate. Or when they see me dressed up in my traditional regalia, it was like, she's Indian, she's Navajo. And I was like, yeah, you're also Navajo too. But more so, I decided, okay, I'm going to keep doing this because I think it is important that students identify to their culture and to their identity. And so with that, throughout the year, I dressed up in my traditional clothes, talked to the kids in Navajo. And when I left our school district, I started at the public library. No expectation whatsoever. I thought, okay, I'm away from our school district. But right after school in November, I remember Native American dress-up day. I didn't dress up in my traditional clothing, but the students that came from our school district to the after-school program, I mean, they were just beyond shocked when they seen me wearing my regular clothes. But it was the students that actually held the expectation for me to dress in my traditional clothes and to participate in the school activities that were taking place here. So from then forward, I decided, okay, it's time that I start participating as an adult and, welcome the students' opinion and so forth, but their expectation, and to hold me to my expectation of what I also held for them. But I mean, it's just unique. And I appreciate that again, but I thank you for your presentation. I hope that we continue to bring more to light within our school district. And more so, I know right now I don't see any Navajo teachers at Lakeview, but I hope that we improve our diversity as far, I mean, not diversity, but more so the Native American teachers in our school district if we do have the high percentage of Navajo students attending our school. So thank you again. Any other questions? All right, well, we're going to go ahead and move on with our agenda.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Yep. Have a
Yes.
wonderful rest of the evening.
Very good. You want
Thank
to
you.
start presenting, Praveen?
Excuse
Right.
me.
Stop presenting.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
Moving on to item C, discussion regarding ways to increase student enrollment. Sandra Kidman, board members. Sandra, would you like to address this?
Well, I was hoping for a presentation on what we're doing to increase student enrollment. I didn't realize we were just discussing it as board members.
I can tell you one thing that we've got in the works.
Okay.
We just had a meeting this last week with some of the assistant principals and other staff members about putting together registration blitzes. And we've got one main blitz on our campus set right now for June 16th. We're still working out what that's going to look like. But having, representatives from each of the schools, CTE, some involvement from band. And then we've also asked Mr. So, our native and language, I can never remember his title. He will be reaching out to the chapters to see if there is a date that would be a good time to take our blitz out to each of the chapters. And we plan to do that as soon as we get some feedback from them on when would be good. And then we thought we would end the blitz. Again, this is all in the very beginning stages and there's a lot of pieces to this, but end it with a final blitz here in the evening at the school district. And this would all take place between like mid-June and maybe the end of July, depending on how quickly we can get responses from the chapters. But we are working on, I know Megan Moore with Student Council, working on putting together a huge video for the district. She has a student, I believe, or knows of a student. I'm not sure if he still attends PUSD, but who's very good in this area, who's going to be attending a lot of events, taking some footage and helping us put together this video on the district to help highlight or showcase what the district has to offer. Like I said, there's going to be there's a lot of different components to this, and we've only met once, but we're meeting again on May 5th to continue working out more details of this and what it could look like.
That's one piece. Another piece is that we are projecting putting together summer enrichment, not summer school as we knew it traditionally, but summer enrichment. The critical piece of that we're building around summer enrichment is building connections, connecting more importantly than sitting in class and doing kill and drill on math. So we're looking at all those opportunities. We've got about 16 proposals from staff that we're working with, and we'll be meeting Thursday to start putting that together and putting that operationally. I would love to see summer school double the numbers because again, that builds our commitment to summer school. At the elementary in Lakeview, we have Kinder Camp coming up in May, and that's going to be another recruiting avenue. We also are, if you look at our website, we're putting huge amounts of information on our website. If you go on the website and go to the high school, you'll see the Wall of Fame, and we're actually profiling students on there who have been very successful in their careers in Page High School. Another thing on there is there's now a connection to YouTube. Most recently, last week, Council Delegate Paul Begay recognized the high school boys and girls basketball teams, and he presented them in Navajo, which was really awesome. And then he presented the players, and then they introduced each of the players as role models for where we're moving forward. So there's a whole bunch of things happening at once in relation to that. We're also looking at bus routes and possibly expanding bus routes to recruit more kids. We're looking obviously at how do we get kids who are in homeschooling to come back to school. So all those kinds of things are in play as we track down kids who didn't show up for in-person learning. And we're on a good roll because during the week of testing, the past couple of weeks, we've had over 80% of the students show up in person to the different schools to get themselves set up for the testing. And we're really pushing that concept of you're doing this testing for yourself, so you see how you are functioning in the learning continuum. Where are you? Are you at grade level? The big piece is, are you at grade level, and what that's going to look like. So all those kinds of things are at work. There is a YouTube video also that just went viral with one of our seniors singing down in the canyon. And what was it called? I'm sorry.
She was singing
Antelope.
at Lower Antelope. Is it the Antelope Canyon?
Yeah,
The
Antelope.
national anthem in Navajo. Yes.
Singing the national anthem in Navajo, which I'd love to play at the next board meeting. And when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, maybe we could play that. It's just an awesome presentation. So one of the critical pieces in that outreach is our language and culture coming out of Mr. So in that program, and he's meeting every chapter monthly. He's doing the planning meeting and then the chapter meeting, and he's doing presentations. Most importantly, he's doing video presentations. And again, you can go on YouTube and see those presentations live that he's putting together monthly with profiling different administrators, different teachers in our school system and making that work. So there's lots going on in relation to recruitment and developing our Sage and Sand, having that ready for what it's going to look like in the fall when we come back, everyone in place and that kind of stuff. So tremendous amount of activities going on related to that. And, Lynn, we read one of them. Another piece is now we've been approved for what's called the summer school feeding program, which is going to go all the way till the end of next year. So we're going to continue all summer to serve meals, breakfast, lunch, and possibly even meals on Friday for our students, which is a big recruiting effort as well. And we'll be putting flyers in there to connect with a lot of things happening at schools. So what the school district website has a lot of stuff on it in terms of that when they're distributing supply packets to kids with school supplies, that's on there. So there's a lot going on. And I think it's making a big difference. And I'm hoping to steal some kids from Kayenta and Tuba City. Won't say that too loud because we did have a couple of ball players. I know one came from Shanto that was participating. And right now our girls softball team, the last I checked, was undefeated. Baseball has a challenge, but they'll rise up and make it. So those kinds of things are all having our sports program out there has been a big piece. And I was talking last night with a forum I did with teachers, and I was talking about that decision to go put the sports program out there, put the kids out there was one of my most difficult decisions with listening to everybody, because I was just so worried that whole week about the kids interacting with other kids, and it all worked out. And look at that. We pulled in 2 state champions in 1 year. Tremendous coaches, tremendous kids. And that again leads to our tremendous teachers. I'm afraid in some cases that our own internal talk is what deters people from coming to Page. And that's why we're countering that with profiling what we're doing and profiling the kids on the website that are going to Stanford. We have a Flynn Foundation scholarship winner. That's almost $150,000 scholarship winner, and 2 summers in Europe. We just had a couple of kids just sign with some other universities and colleges to play sports. And so we're pumping it out there as fast as we can to make it work. And that's by example. We're revising our programs to make them at the high school going the 7-period day and pushing that around the variety it's going to create and the way it's going to meet the learning needs of our students. So on and on.
Sounds good. Thank you. Chuck?
Well, it's good that we're being culturally responsive there. So I guess my question is for the student enrollment, increasing student enrollment, right? Does that mainly focus towards in-person learning, or is this going to be, as online as well, or Sage and Sand, or
Well,
what's the overall goal expectation?
our focus is in-person learning, because if you go out and talk to our teachers, they're going to tell you having those kids in class is the best thing that can happen. Some kids do really well with in-person learning. I'm sorry, with virtual learning.
Yeah.
But being in class, being at school is the best thing that can happen. We will have Sage and Sand for those who have done really well in virtual and want to stay there. They can go to Sage and Sand and move that forward as we're building that curriculum. We're moving it down, I think 5th grade now. We're down that low and getting the stuff put together for it. Kindergarten, 1st and 2nd is really tough online, as you well know, virtually. Yeah. So we're hitting it about 4th grade, 5th grade, and moving up from there.
Yeah. So I think, with that being said, I'm not sure what the constraints are for the Navajo Nation as far as, the president of the Navajo Nation is, being pretty stringent with the, COVID situation. And I don't know when they're going to change or what am I trying to say? Like the mask, the curfew and the mask and the restrictions, right? They've got going on. And so far, nobody's in person in school, correct? Still,
well, in Page they are.
I know, but I'm talking about like if we're trying to recruit more people,
right,
going to schools in Kianta or Tuba City,
they're having more difficulty with that. The nation's in yellow transmission level right now, and we're hoping they move down more. And he's issued the executive order. We were just reviewing it today, actually, the latest 2 executive orders, where now you can be at 20% or 50% occupancy, depending on what it is, if it's a park or if it's a restaurant or that kind of stuff. So it's slowly loosening up, but just like everything else, when you listen to the news, the prediction is there's going to be another surge. And so we've all got to be prepared for that. And that's one of the things that why we continue when the masking, the governor lifted the masking mandate, we are continuing our masking at school because we have Navajo Nation in yellow and we have our county in substantial transmission. So we need to continue the mitigation strategy for the mask, hand washing, the social distance, that kind of stuff.
So, I lost my train of thought here. I was going to ask you another question regarding it on lines of, well, yeah. So the teachers now. So we say we get the students. Are we going to have the teachers to, handle, more students, the influx students? Let's just say if we have that happen.
Yes, just today, if I were presenting, if we were in May's business meeting, you would be asked to hire 7 teachers right now. So we're continuing to recruit. If you remember, in January, I gave you a list of possibilities for reduction, and we've looked at that. I was heavily criticized for that. However, if you looked at Gilbert Unified School District, they didn't give any warning, and they went in one night. The board dismissed 150 teachers, and all the teachers were just as mad at Gilbert as my teachers were mad at me for showing some of the possible cuts. So again, do you want to know about it or do you not want to know about it is one of the issues that makes it worthwhile. But, while, yeah, we're losing teachers, but Gilbert lost 150 teachers. So there's a recruiting pool. If you go on the ASBA website, and one of the things that we're looking at is, and you scroll down, you'll see Paradise Valley has bought some space on the ASBA website for recruiting. And we're looking at that possibility as well. The recruiting is more electronic now than it's ever been in the past, but we still need to reach out. We still need to reach out and publish. Every Sunday, I read the Navajo Times to see where the jobs are out there and what our competition is. And so all those things are being put in place. And we will have the teachers, or we'll have the educational programs for the kids. We're also looking at a pathway to certification for our parapros. That's on the table being developed as we look at that. There's couple different programs that will help them enroll. And of course, nowadays you can go, your junior and senior year of college online just about. And so it's thinking about a different way. It's not that I have to get up and go down to Flagstaff or Phoenix to go to college. College can come here. Looking at developing a relationship with Grand Canyon University and NAU and those kinds of things as they get back online. It's a lot. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, can I get back to, so would you say that, do you feel confident that we have a like a coordinated plan to recruit this summer for students, like radio, newspaper, you mentioned the Navajo Times, the websites? I don't know.
I will rephrase your statement. Say I feel like we have a plan.
Okay.
Confident yet? Not, but it's getting there because like I said, we've already identified 7 staff. They've been interviewed, vetted, and they're being recommended. So we're moving, and we could probably move faster.
No, I mean for student recruitment. I'm not talking about teacher recruitment. I'm sorry.
We're doing those kinds of things, yes, and we're continuing to educate everyone on the quality of our programs that we're putting in place.
Okay, thank you.
And if you know of other places where we might be able to influence kids to come back, that would be awesome. One of the areas I'm trying to, with all of our information putting out there, is the homeschooling. Get those kids back in school if we can. That would be a great thing to happen.
I guess I have one question. Are we using, can we use like old information that we have ourselves? I assume that we still have contact information in Power Schools about kids that were here before. Is that correct? Or do we seal those up and nobody gets to look at them?
No, that is correct. We do have that. And
okay.
We have dropout reports. I call them W4s that we have, and we follow up on all those kids to see where they are.
Okay. And then I believe if you homeschool, you have to register with the county superintendent, correct?
You're supposed to. I won't guarantee that's happening, but you're supposed to.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. One thought I had is, with reaching out to students is, or that are homeschooling is, I think the biggest thing is having the sports program for one, and looking at our elective programs or the CTE programs. And, if, that's what students want, or are they wanting something else other than what we have currently?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's really, really important. I'm trying to get us to bring in more robotics, STEAM education, science, and those kinds of things.
The other thing you had mentioned a while back too, and I wanted to bring this up again, and I don't know how everybody else feels, is you were talking about ROTC program or something.
Yes, that's in process. The application process is, I guess, changed over the years or something, because it's not moving as fast as I would like it to, but that is in the works. Chuck at the high school is working on that. I know it went, and it comes through, now it comes through CTE programs, and I know it went to the caveat board recently, but I haven't followed up on it. I need to do that. Thank you.
Sandra?
Well, I was just going to say, with Charles saying that, I think you and I have had this conversation, Larry, is the things that we need to emphasize is the things that kids can't do at home or in online school, like music programs. You can't take a choir class online. You can't take an orchestra class online. You can't take band online. You can't take, what did you say, automotive, for example, maybe, because they're hands-on things. They're things that you're doing as a group. And I think if we can, it sounds like you're starting to highlight those already. So if we can highlight those, that would be great.
We are, and that's part of Mr. Rivers' program. That was part of the athletic event piece. We just had an inquiry the other day from a team, some I want to say softball teams in Utah that want to come down and play. So again, all that gets us more and more attention as we're going along.
No, I just want to mention, I know I've talked with several parents who are doing online schooling with a different program, just waiting for our school district to go back into in-person so that their child can return back to Page Unified School District. So, there's word, I think, that will help us bring student enrollment back up. So any other questions? Dee, do you have any questions? You've been quiet. All right, if we don't have any questions, Sandra, are you good to move forward?
Yeah, I would, I don't know, maybe we could report on that again to see, I mean, it doesn't have to be a long, big presentation or anything, just maybe a 5-minute update, how things are going with student recruitment. And then especially at the beginning of the next school year, see if our efforts were fruitful, like, I don't know, compare numbers or maybe
Absolutely.
identify how many new students did we get at the individual schools. Are we back to comparable numbers from the previous 2 years? I mean, I know it's going to be hard because the plant did leave, and they left, a lot of kids left with the plant, but I think we're kind of 2 years behind that now. So it would be good to just see if our efforts actually paid off, and maybe we can, how they ask sometimes, well, how did you find us? Maybe we could ask those students, well, why did you come back to Page, or how did you find us, and see which efforts brought the most dividends. I guess I would be interested in that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. All right, so we'll have updates later, but more so I look forward to that information. Moving along to item D, presentation regarding Page Unified School District graduation events. Ann Martin and Trina Hubble.
Hi, good evening. Are you guys able to hear me? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to give the presentation for Sage and Sand Virtual Academy as well as Manson Mesa High School. Sage and Sand Virtual Academy will have a commencement ceremony to honor the class of 2021 on Wednesday, May 12th. During the week of May 10th, we are asking our graduating seniors to pick up their 2021 tassels, caps, and gowns from Manson Mesa High School. Each of our graduate will receive an empty diploma cover during the ceremony. In order to receive the diploma, graduates must come to Manson Mesa on Friday, May 14th, or Monday, May 17th, between 8 and 3, to return their cap and gowns. In addition, we will be collecting their Chromebooks at that time. The ceremony will be held at the Cultural Arts Building. SSVA's commencement ceremony is Wednesday, May 12th at the CAB. Manson Mesa High School's commencement ceremony, is Thursday, May 13th at the CAB. Social distancing measures will be maintained throughout the ceremony. The commencement ceremony will begin at 7 p.m. And following the ceremony, cake and water will be served outside of the building. I don't know if you all have any questions. I do have an agenda. I will be contacting a few of you to participate in the agenda. I believe, for example, that Mrs. Fowler, you assisted last year with awarding of the diplomas. So we're going to ask if that you can participate in that process again this year. And I know that Mr. Candelaria also expressed interest in attending, and we are going to ask that he give the closing address. And so if anybody else would like to participate, just let me know. I don't know if anybody has any questions concerning the graduation ceremony for Sage and Sand and Manson Mesa.
So how many students from Sage and Sand are graduating?
For Sage and Sand, we currently have 5 that will be participating. Wow. We are monitoring an additional 5 students. Currently, we are working with the students to just complete their course of study. And then we also have 2 for Manson Mesa. And just like with Sage and Sand, we are monitoring an additional 2 students as well.
So now you understand that in Sage and Sand, you've now established a baseline. So next year you got to have 20 graduate.
That's correct. Anybody?
I have a question. You
Yes.
mentioned that Manson Mesa's graduation is going to be at 7 p.m. I didn't hear a time for Sage and Sand.
It's the exact same time, just
Okay,
going to follow the very next day.
sounds good. Thank you for that. Board members, do you have any questions? Okay, thank you, Trina. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Page High School.
Good evening, governing board members and Superintendent Wallen. The week of May 10th is the week of the senior at Page High School. And so I'll give you a little bit more information that will lead up to our commencement ceremony information as well. On May 12th, we have planned an outdoor grad walk. I'm pretty excited about this. I think it might actually be more conducive to a grad walk than our previous setup. So our graduates will tour around each of our campuses on May 12th so that our other students will get to see them and celebrate their success. On May 13th, we have our senior award ceremony. We'll also be serving our seniors lunch on campus that day. For the senior award ceremony, each senior will get 6 tickets. It will take place in the main gym. All the bleachers will be pulled out and available so that we can keep families seated together using physical and social distancing. Masking will be required as well throughout the duration of that ceremony. On May 14th, we have a senior breakfast in the works catered by our food service program here at PUSD. We also have graduation practice, the commencement ceremony practice on May 14th. And that leads up to our class of 2021 commencement ceremony on May 15th at Sand Devil Stadium at 2 p.m. That's our start time. Each grad will have access to 6 tickets for that ceremony as well. This is in the effort to keep families seated together using our mitigation strategies of physical and social distancing. Masking will be required. We're currently working on a live streaming of our commencement ceremony. We have secured someone who will do this service for the district. And at each of these events where we're asking the public to come onto our campus, we will have health screenings. So for both the senior award ceremony and the commencement ceremony, there will be the health screening with a temperature check that occurs at the entrances. We have 157 seniors in the 2021 cohort. I've run various scenarios, just like Dr. Hubble said. Some students are being monitored closely for completing their course of study and their graduation requirements. All of the scenarios look like we're going to be able to sustain our typical graduation rate that we've had over the last few years, which has fluctuated between 89% in 2018, all the way up to 92% last year. For our commencement ceremony, we're looking at nearly 1,000 people in the stadium. That includes our graduates, their guests, our staff, which are honored guests to this event as well, who will be seated on the field around the graduates. And then of course, us. There'll be 4 individuals that will be able to fit on the stage. That would be me, Mr. Henderson, Mr. Rivers, Mr. Wallen. I think we have RSVP for 4 board members
at this point. So you might check with Lynn and make sure if you know you're going to be there that you've RSVP'd. So in order to keep physical distancing, there'll be seating around the stage for our board members that will allow you easy access up to the ramps where you guys typically stand in order to say congratulations as the graduates exit the stage and get their picture taken. I think that covers it. Do you guys have any questions?
Mr. Wallens?
I understand that when they exit the stage, you've made preparations so that the student could take off his mask and get his picture taken with his real face, so to speak.
Yeah. So when they get the diploma from me, typically there's a picture taken there, but we thought it would be not to their advantage to have their graduation picture with masked people. So they'll get their diploma. I've been told I can do an elbow bump, no handshaking. And then as they exit the stage, they'll be able to pause, take their mask off so that their graduation picture can be them with their diploma case.
Thank you for putting that together.
Question. With numbers changing in our county and also on the Navajo Reservation, what is your alternate plan?
We don't have an alternate plan other than having to possibly do a drive-through like we did last year if things are, turning sideways on us with COVID-19 information that we get. That was pretty successful. Some people appreciated it more maybe than our typical, although it's not going to be our plan A. I think we can, now that we've been through it once, it would be something that we would be able to easily shift to.
Sounds good. And you will have hand sanitizer available for students, right?
Yeah, all that will be at the gate when they come in. We'll have some on the stage. We've got wipies for the microphone. We had a coordination meeting recently where we went over all of those and made a list of those materials that will be necessary and where.
Sounds good. And how many valedictorians do we have this year?
We have 6.
And salutatorians?
There's always just one.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
All right. Any other question, board members?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Oh, there it goes. That was weird. Sorry. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So what's the reasoning for 2 o'clock versus 7 o'clock that we traditionally had?
Yeah, over the years, we've had some information brought to our attention regarding safety measures in our stadium and just in general about the timing at dark. So an afternoon graduation will help us navigate the stadium in daylight. It will help with parking in daylight, which can get a little congested in that area across from the park. And it will help those that have traveled off of the Navajo Nation to get home in daylight as well. Some of our students have quite a trip just to get into our campus. This also helps us with crowd mitigation. Over the years, our graduation, our commencement ceremony has been very open to the community. This has presented some scenarios that we've had to give attention to that really takes away from our graduates. So these are ways to help keep the event safe and focused on our graduates.
Okay, do you have, oh, sorry, oh, go ahead.
I think the curfew is still in effect. It's not a curfew, a stay home order is still in effect. And I think it starts at 9 o'clock or something like that. I can double check and get that to you, Sandra.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was just curious what the thinking behind it was, and that makes a lot of sense. The other question I had was weather. So sometimes it can be very hot, sometimes it can be very cold and stormy. In the last 12 years, we've only had one time where there was a sprinkle of rain, but then it disappeared. But looking at the weather these last 2 weeks, I'm just wondering, is there a backup plan? Because I know that in previous years, the backup plan was, I think it was around 6 tickets and going into the main gym, possibly if the weather's not good.
Yeah, so the main gym is our backup plan if there's inclement weather.
Okay,
Having the tickets to restrict the number and keep it to honored guests of the graduates can definitely help with that plan if we have to shift very quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Wallens, can I get what is, or I'm sorry, maybe Anne can answer this. What is our math capacity in the high school gym?
Oh goodness, Miss Fowler, I knew this probably 2 months ago when we had to go through and we increased the capacity. Let me see if I can do some quick calculator math here.
And it would be a percentage because we still need to try to maintain some semblance of distancing there. So let's hope the weather stays good. I know when I was high school principal, I only had one time in which graduation had to be moved inside of the 5 years that I did graduation.
So this is a rough. I know that when we had the 25% capacity in order to have the semifinals for basketball, I thought I remembered that number was 450. So that's a 25% capacity. If you divide that or multiply that by 4, you're looking at around 1,800, but I feel like that might be a little low. I can get you guys that information if you're wondering, but those are definitely things that we consider and we work through those scenarios to make sure that our capacities are accurate.
Sounds great. No, I just want to make sure that we address the alternate plans and that it's addressed properly so that there's just, we don't have angry people out there upset with us.
We want everybody to come to these events and be ready to celebrate the graduates.
Definitely sounds good. Board
Can I ask
members.
one more thing?
Yes, Sandra.
Okay, so you mentioned maybe a live stream. How soon will that information be available? Will the graduates know how to share that? And I don't know.
I would say that we would have all the details worked out to communicate that during the week of May 10th. It'll work very similar to the way that the basketball games work. So it will be posted. I know I accessed some of the basketball games by going to the Page Unified School District Facebook page and then just clicking on that link, and it took me to the live streaming. So it would be on the Facebook page. It would be on our website, our district Facebook page and website.
Do you think it would be available to send that link just to all the seniors so they can email it out? If they...
I would have to ask about the technical aspect. I'm not sure that the link is created until it begins. Does that make sense? Like until the live streaming begins, there wouldn't be the direct link.
Okay, I was just wondering to make it, easy for our seniors, but they have more technology skills than the rest of us all do combined together anyway. So, but okay, thank you.
Welcome. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you again for your presentation. Moving along to item E, review of policy KEB and KEB-R, public concerns complaints about personnel and accompanying exhibit. Larry Wallens.
Okay, let me try to share my screen with you. Well, I got half of it shared. Oh, there. Can you see the policy KEB in front of you. Is that showing? Okay, just wanted to run through that. I was asked in one of my conversations with board members about what is that. K is the section of the policy manual that has to do with the public, with parents and those kinds of people. This is not employee based. This is, again, public. And so when there is a complaint, we follow this process, and we're actually processing some complaints right now. All complaints will be referred to the superintendent for investigation. The employee involved shall be given an opportunity at each administrative level which the matter is reviewed for explanation, comment, and presentation. So there's actually a report that's put together. And the most important piece, though, is that the employee will be afforded the elements of due process of providing Arizona law. And basically what that means is they have the right to know who their accuser is and to face their accuser in a conversation. So that's the policy. And again, the policy is best handled by sharing at the school level or wherever the closest point is to the complainant. And so that we want to make sure that we're free of unnecessary, spiteful, negative criticisms and complaints. It's not just an area where you can go in and just say anything you want to and do anything you want to, but it does keep a paper trail that's involved, and so that whomever is involved with that process, again, gets that due process under Arizona law. So this
Larry, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can barely see your screen because you're sharing everything on your computer. So if you could,
So if I can make it larger.
I think there is a way.
How's that?
Okay, just kind of center it. Yeah, you can center it.
Okay.
Works. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that. Some more.
Okay.
Expand it some more.
There
we go. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, it's to get away from this unnecessary, spiteful, or negative criticism and complaints. And so this gives you the policy, and the critical piece is that, and that there is due process involved. So there is a report that's generated each level. The next piece is the regulation. The regulations outlines the process, the required information for the complaint, so that everything is in there that needs to be in there, and what that happens. And then there's a processing of the complaint and a written summation. So this is what we follow in putting that together. So the complaint shall be presented to the employee to whom it is directed is the first step. And again, that meets that concept of due process, because that employee gets to face the person that's complaining, and together with a suggested solution personally and in writing, so that there is a written documentation by the person filing the complaint. And then it's the responsibility of the supervisor to keep the superintendent informed. And then there's a timeline that's established as you go through this. So it works through that process, which is important to make sure that something happens. The complaint shall be reviewed at each of the levels. Then the supervisor within 2 business days after receiving the response to the complaint, but not later than 10 days. So between a window of 2 to 10 days following the complaint, it moves to a written report stage, finding and the administrative action to be taken if there is any. And the report will not disclose confidential personnel information, but it will stay generic, and again, protect the confidential rights of our employees, our students as well. And then it goes up to each successive level, and eventually comes to the superintendent. And then if it comes to the superintendent and it's still not resolved, then it could possibly go to the board following the superintendent's decision. And the board would then have a written documentation of those steps that were followed, be they 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels, depending on where the complaint started. Then the board has said that they will consider all the facts and provide all elements of due process. Again, that's the critical piece in reaching a decision. That the due process, again, is that you get to face, and at least it was one of the founding principles of our country, that you get to face your accuser and try to work things out at that level. And then there's a form for tracking the process, the complaint that it goes through. So that's basically what that policy says. The next policy, that's the one in for the public. There is one for, sorry, I need to increase it. This is one for students, and that's the J. Anything with J tells you that it's a student-related issue. And so students' complaints, concerns, complaints, and grievances, again, it outlines a process. And this process cannot be the subject of a disciplinary action. So if I'm getting suspended, I can't file a complaint. I'm getting suspended. There is a process within the suspension, student discipline for appeals of disciplinary actions. It's, again, looking at constitutional rights, equal opportunity, discrimination, treatment on the basis of race or sex, and concern for the student's safety. So again, it goes through the same thing, that accusation must be made within 30 days. So there's a timeline in most cases that was there that should be followed. This is supposed to be posted in the school so that the students know that they have 30 days in which to file that complaint. The initial complaint of the grievance shall be made using the form that's attached. A verbal complaint or grievance may be made to any school staff member, and then that will then be translated in writing. Is submitted in a manner other than the prescribed by the administrator. So all student provided particulars determined will be in the complaint. Again, protecting confidentiality. So you may see the student's name redacted or any qualifying, identifying information that could be redacted. Then the receiving school administrator is transmitted to the next level if it's that person that's involved. And so that goes through, again, a process. A student may file the complaint, or a parent or guardian may initiate the complaint process. And it can be stopped at any time. Once withdrawn, the process cannot be reopened if the submission is longer than 30 calendar days. So retaliatory or intimidating acts against any student who's made a complaint, we are required to protect that student and make sure that they are protected, and it's prohibited to discriminate against that student. And again, to make sure everyone knows about this, there's a notice that is posted so that students can find that notice. It's also in their student handbook. The forms are there, and so on. And again, it outlines a procedure. So this is the policy part. Then the regulation does the same thing. It outlines a process and it outlines a timeline. So it should be within 30 days there, and then it goes through that process. So investigation of the report incident or activity should be made within 10 school days when school's in session, or within 15 days during which the school offices are open, and so on. The investigator shall meet with the student who submitted the complaint, process it. Confidentiality of records shall be maintained to protect the student. So there could be, when you get the report, if it gets that far, you get the report, you may see redacted information related to the student's name and so on. Then the investigators shall prepare a written report of the findings, and the copy of the report shall be provided to the principal and or the superintendent as circumstances warrant, and so on and so forth. So it goes through the same thing. And then you have an exhibit that outlines the information that needs to be included in there. And in some cases, what we do is if it's a email complaint, then we just attach this cover sheet and then attach the email to the complaint form. The last piece is that exhibit of what's supposed to be posted in all student handbooks and displayed in the building. Again, outlines that process for students to give them a voice in something that they may want to complain about. So with that, are there any questions? So K, again, is for the public. J is for students.
Sandra, do you have any
Yeah,
questions?
I have a question. Where in the buildings are those displayed?
I apologize, I didn't ask that question, but I'll find out and get back to you on that.
Okay, but it says in the policy that it has to be displayed in the building.
In the building, yes.
Okay, so somewhere in each of our schools, we should have a place where this policy is clearly displayed.
We should, yes. I'm not going to guarantee it because I just opened these up and started, going through them.
Okay,
so I will make sure that they are displayed.
Okay, can you report back then to tell us where they are displayed in each building?
Sure.
And when we talk buildings, I'm assuming it means at least once at every school, correct? I mean, I can't imagine that it means you have to display it in the gym and it just needs to be somewhere where most students have access, correct?
Exactly. Yes,
Okay,
and it is in the student handbook as well, but it does require the display.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Sandra. Does anybody else have a question? Okay. Well, I appreciate the presentation and think this is definitely following due process for all concerns and complaints that are and grievance for our school district. So thank you for that. Looks like nobody has any questions. So, and Mr. Wallens did cover item F. So we'll go ahead and move on to item G, current retiree contract and compensation. Larry?
Just to review this, you have this in your file. I seem to, oh, there it is. Sorry. Now I found it. Now I think I can try to just share it in the screen again. Yeah, right there. And then I can increase the size of it. This is something that I've been working on for a long time, trying to figure out how this came about. And thank you for allowing retirees to return to work and have insurance. Well, the other thing that we discovered as we were moving into this is that, and I don't know where the rule is, but there was a rule, and generally it appeared right up here. And they're a retiree, and that's why there's a separate contract, that if a retiree returns to work, they are penalized 20% of their salary. And of course, before you remove the benefits package, they were also offered no benefits. And that's not a very strong incentive for employees to come back to work. And so, you know, if you're young, you can retire in your late 50s, probably with the 80, 85 points that's required. And you still have got, you know, a few years to get to 65 to get to the Medicare support that you need to help have insurance. And so one of the things, one of the recruiting efforts is to open that pipeline back up for retirees. This is happening throughout the state, actually the nation, and have them have a responsibility if they want to come back to work and spend some time doing that, that's fine. There are some specific requirements to go with that. For retired teachers, there is no tenure. So if they come back, they're on a year-to-year contract, like a probationary teacher. And then there is a piece of their salary. They pay all the benefits everybody else pays. They pay state retirement, they pay Social Security, they pay state tax, federal tax, all those pieces. And so, but what was happening, and I'll be bringing this to the board at the next meeting, asking you to approve putting these people back, giving them back their salary, the 20% of their salary that was taken away from them. So in some cases, that means a person might be pushed to minimum wage or even below, depending on where they are on the salary schedule. And so, just to give you the background, again, I didn't go into great research to find out where it came from, what started it. It's probably could have been, you know, back in 2008 when there was the state budget collapse, that was a budget saving measure, but it's being balanced on the back of our employees. And we haven't done anything this year where we've taken that away from our employees. So I'll be asking the board to return that 20%. There are, I want to say 7 employees that are remaining. We can only do this for 1 year because contracts are 1 year at a time. So I'm going to be asking the board to support making these people whole for this year on their contracts. Questions I can answer for you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Sandra.
It says, is the problem the retiree certified salary schedule?
Yes.
Is that, so they have a completely different salary schedule?
Correct. And what it would say is 20% reduction.
That's what it says on the salary schedule?
On their specific ones, yes.
And that is based on their last year of working here?
These people are working here currently. I said there are 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm sorry, there's 8 that are working here. And those people's contracts were reduced by 20% for this year. And I don't know how long that's been happening. I can only deal with 1 year at a time because again, a contract is only for 1 year.
Okay, so you would this would apply to school year 21-22.
Correct.
You're not saying retroactively for this school year, right?
Correct. Because
Okay. No, I'm just asking those. I just want to know.
That's a good question. That's a really good question because I've had some of those people have asked me that question. Well, are you going to go back to when I started? And I said, I can't. I can only go with one contract at a time. I wish I'd have been here. I would have spoken to that, but we're going to take you this year and make you whole on that.
Okay.
Yeah, some good questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
So at the business meeting, I'll be asking you to take those 8 people and restore them to 100% contract.
Okay, question then.
Yes.
Sure.
Well, that just are okay. So those 7 people, but what about if we have people coming back? This is going to be the case for all retiree certified teacher contracts, right?
Well, this contract goes away after this year. We're not using this contract next year.
Oh, so it's just this year, like right now, the people that have signed contracts right now or in the process of signing contracts? Is that what you're saying?
This is not on there. Yeah, if they're coming back, those people that we're talking about, if they're coming back, they got a contract that does not have the penalties in them.
Okay. And then going forward, we're going to dismiss this completely. We're going to get rid of the retiree certified salary schedule. It's just going to be the other certified salary schedule.
Correct. Well, I don't have that either. I'm trying to get that one. Get the salary schedules. Definitely. I'd like for you to approve a salary schedule package where we have all the salary schedules so that we have them. I'm still working on getting that one. Okay. And remember the salary schedule for certified staff is stepless. So once they're placed, there's a placement schedule, and then it's based on the raises we give every year.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right. Moving along. Thank you again, Larry, for that update. Item H, board corner. So I know that each one of us has written an article in the board corner for the board corner. So my thought was, what if each and every one of us submit a paragraph or 2 to congratulate our seniors and I guess everyone in the district, and give some kind of positive praise to end the school year?
I know one of the suggestions you had made too previously, Desiree, was to maybe have Steve pose 1 or 2 questions to each of the board members and just have them answer the questions, and that'll go into the board corner as well. I did have a conversation with Mr. Candelaria about that, and he thought that was a great idea too.
What is your thoughts, board members? A team project, or do we designate one person to write the May board corner?
I don't mind doing a paragraph. That's fine. No.
Yes, Sandra.
I can do a paragraph. That's fine. The only thing I would worry there is redundancy, but other than that, I'm okay with it.
Maybe Lynn can coordinate that.
What?
Maybe Lynn can coordinate the questions so that you don't all get the same question.
Oh, no, that didn't, I mean the redundancy of congratulating.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say, like Sandra, I think I like the idea of each of us do a congratulatory.
But maybe it's okay to be redundant when you're congratulating, because that's the whole purpose of congratulations, I guess. So yeah, I'm fine with it. I like the
fine with
idea
it.
with the 2 questions, or because it is not that easy to just come up with some topic and then go on and on for a whole page. Might be
Yes.
interesting. Might be interesting to see what different board members think about different issues. That might be actually something I would like to read. So
Sounds good. All right. So are we giving ourselves a choice to write independently a paragraph and then also possibly even do the question, or do we just want to stick with one or the other? Because I heard both.
You said you want to do this for May. I think that's a great idea. And then going forward in June, you can start with the questions, right?
Sounds great. That's a good idea too.
Yeah. When do we need to have this paragraph in by?
Well, the idea soon, by the end of the week would be great. Steve typically tries to stick with the first of the month for his deadline on getting the newsletter out. So if you could all look at maybe the end of the week, that would probably help him out tremendously.
Okay,
So
how
what
many
are we
words
doing?
are we? Oh, go ahead,
And-
Dee.
I'm sorry, Dee, can you repeat that again?
What are we doing?
We're writing a paragraph.
On that note,
Congratulating the graduates, or okay, all right.
and when you say paragraph, how many words are we talking about? Because paragraph for Bob might mean 500 words. For me, it might.
250.
Well, he's
Might
not
be
here,
a
so I get to.
sentence.
He's not here, so I
A
get to
sentence
pick
or
on him a
two.
little bit. But what does that mean? 50 words, 100 words? I mean, Bob will do 500. So
Max it at 250. That's
max 250, 100 to 250.
Make it short.
Make it okay. That's more 100. D says 100. Okay.
One word. Congratulations. There you go. I'm teasing. No, I'm pretty sure Steve would be good if.
Well, if we all do 100, that's 500 words right there. That's a tip. How many pages is that typically? Isn't that a whole page right there?
That could be, depends on your spacing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he can decide on the spacing.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if we all do
Leave it up to the individual.
Okay. All right. Well, I say 100 is good because then we got 500 words. So there we go.
Sounds good.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So we are all going to be writing our own paragraph, congratulating our students and our school students. And that is due this Friday at 5 p.m. sharp, correct? Mountain Standard Time.
If we're going to get that technical.
That's 4 o'clock page time. Now you're going to have to be really specific.
Oh, that's 5 o'clock page time, Mountain Standard. Daylight saving.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yes.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Just making sure we're all in the same time zone because we struggle with that.
If you want to just send them to me, then I can forward them all on to him.
Okay.
Sounds good. And will you make sure to share that information with Bob? And his limit is 500. We get to pick on him. All right. Thank you again, board members. Appreciate your time. And Larry Wallens, Lynn, thank you for your time as well. And also our presenters. So we're going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 7:35 p.m.
Need a motion to adjourn, don't you?
Oh, well, do we have a motion?
I make a motion we adjourn.
A second.
Okay, second. So I got a motion from Sandra, second by Charles. All in favor, say aye.